somehow resulting in at many global events. An example is the 2012 Olympic Games, where the national team, well,
Sports Festival was halted in the quarterfinals by 19-year-old Nimota Aregbeshola. Amidst these record-breaking and
the NTA parliamentarian. Thanks for being with us tonight. So, sitting.
God be the glory. When we took the question was it going to be possible for the ministry with the FCT to organize a national sports festival in 9 months, knowing too well that it takes 2 years to organize the festival? The permanent secretary asked me whether we can do it, in view of the fact that he is coming into the ministry new. And I said, well, with determination in life, even 3 days you can succeed. All that takes to drive a process is determination. I said, look, even if we are going to have 2 or 3 states gathering in Abuja, let us first revive and reclaim the National Sports Festival before we will begin to look at where we will build on it. And what turned out at the end of the day was something we never even anticipated.
Them know happening. But with the strong support of the Honorable Minister and his drive, we commenced the process.
Surprised or worried that for 6 years we could not put together a sports festival at national level that's supposed to bring up new talents? How worrying is this? How worrisome is it?
Thank you very much, Cyril. Yes, it is worrisome, but we must also understand that within those 6 years, we had the National Youth Games, which the Honorable Minister had instituted, and that was helping to bridge the gap in what will have been a large lacuna in the development of talents. So I must say that the ministry has done very well to notice that there was a gap, because we don't know what happens behind the scene, and the permanent sec has explained really the should I say, administrative hiccups that happen in who is hosting and who is not hosting, all the things that have to happen. But as a sportsman, as a technocrat itself, I will just look at what really the games is bringing to us, and like you said, how we really are sports-loving people. The minister said earlier on that they expected 10,000 athletes. Let me point out that in the Olympics, as big as the Olympics is, the biggest event in the world, we have 10,500 athletes. And even Nigeria, we can gather in a festival with about 8,000 athletes. It shows that Nigeria alone is big enough to even host the Olympics. We have enough sportsmen, we have enough energy, we have enough talents to be able to host a multi-level event like the Olympic is. So I must commend the ministry for taking up the mantle to make sure that the growth in sports is not stunted. The National Youth Games has been wonderful. We had a lot of National Youth Game champions winning even in the festival. So we haven't lost so much. We lost the excitement, the blitz, the razzmatazz, the whole glamour of the festival. But with the African Youth Games, the National Youth Games, the federations holding their own events, I don't think that we missed too much in terms of developing talents. But in terms of having a festival, a property that can showcase the best of Nigerian sports, it's something that the Nigerians were lacking, and we are very happy that the Honorable Minister has brought it back. And you can see while states were reluctant to take it up over the past 6 years, we had about 4 states fiercely bidding to host the next one. So that shows that something good is happening and something really is going on right.
What are your impressions?
Could you say that again? We didn't get that.
Let's go over to Hamid, who's right there with you in Lagos, and we ask Hamid, what are your impressions, Hamid? it would seem that we're having some challenges getting to hear you there. We'll try and fix that problem with your microphone, I believe, or some other issues there, and we'll return to Lagos in just a moment. But back here in Abuja, well, so many reasons have been adduced for why it took so long and what might have Nigeria must have lost or what it might not have lost. But again, the worry is, what was it all about? Even when the federal government had decided to take the burden of it, the states were still not willing to throw in what was expected of them. What's the big issue here? Is it finances? Is it? A lot of Nigerians would really like to know, from your perspective, what was it? What was the main issue?
You know, it was more or less like a fire brigade approach, because the decision we took was to impose on the federal government that, look, repossess this national heritage, own it. We are already having problems with it. So you need to come in and own it, reposition it so that it can take a direction. And the budgetary provisions, as at the time we took the decisions, were not within the other national budgets of the state. In fact, the funding had to come from special intervention by the president, who accepted to us. And I took time to explain to him, the significance of the National Sports Festival. It's one of the national heritages of our peace and unity in this country. The National Sports Festival, NYC, FCT. These three institutions are very, very key. So we cannot afford to abandon it. But of course, you see, like he said, there is one thing in this country we must get right. The funding of sports, whether from the attitude of the legislature down to the release of funds, have been something that it can sometimes be very, very frustrating. At a point in time, I still refer to experiences I had with the permanent secretary. At a point in time, he was asking, should we cancel the game? And I told him we can't. And I said, okay, what do? We are about 3 months to the hosting of the games, and we have no clue as to whether these funds will be released to us. And I told him, I said, what we'll do is go back to the ministry, discuss with the DFA, and see whether we can lay hands on any funds handy within us to start prosecuting some of the critical things we need to put in place before the games. I told him, I said, I know there is a tradition in sports that funds will be released on the eve of either the festival or the tournament.
Should it be so all the time?
That is one of the injustices that I kept complaining about. The right thing to do is, once an approval has been given for an event, funds should be released within the next 7 days to enable proper planning, because sports planning is one aspect of policy implementation that is mentally demanding, is stressful. It also requires widespread consultation and mobilization. So if you don't have the funds, you will not be able to do it. But nonetheless, since we had to think and look outside the box, we got what we got. And to God be the glory, the funds were released 3 days to the event. But of course, actually, since we've gotten funds to start cleaning, to start updating facilities, to start the paperwork, printing of programs, getting kits, some of the kits for our VIPs, we were not at all affected. That is the secret of the success of the 19th National Sports Festival.
All right, but we'll still hold many other festivals, and hopefully not just even this festival, but as a bureaucrat. Let's bring this now to the permanent secretary. Should the bureaucracy always work, at this slow pace as to affect things that are, supposed to be done at the time they're supposed to be done?
Thank you.
How do you oil this bureaucratic machinery to run smoothly?
Yes, we oil it in different ways. You know, when you talk of the national budget, looking at it global, from the top, challenges may be beyond what you can be, what is obvious to you at your level. So we believe there were challenges at that end, but what did we do rightly? We tried, just as the Honorable Minister said, we now try to be more innovative and creative to see aspects of it. Those that do not require much funding and critical, we commence. For instance, in events of that nature, the MOC and the LOC should meet severally to fine-tune. The MOCs is comprised of officials within Abuja and outside, like representative of the directors forum, representative of athletes, officials, federations, all of them are represented in the MOC. But because of limited funding, we at times adopted virtual communication to discuss and review. We also took to doing much of letters to inform them this is what we have done. Now, when we review the regulations for the festival, this has to be seen. It should have ordinarily been seen at a setting that everybody will be present. But hey there, look at, we don't have the resources. What do? We email it to everybody, send in your report within a period of time to enable us put together. So instead of have 2-3 meetings, we had only one meeting. We reviewed. We had training of technical officials. You remember, for 6 years, that training did not hold because it's often held during the festival period. You cannot do anything other than that. We had to invite those ones. So we look for funds within our overhead that were released then and held the trainings. So by that adjustment, we're able to coast, and that's what supported. In fact, the role the Honorable Minister played in the success of this festival was not little at all. At odd time, we'll call on him. The minister, this is challenge we are having. Please help us put a call to this person. Please. At one time, we were having reservations as to whether the state will support. What did we do? We convened an extraordinary meeting of the National Council on Sport. Let us, we want to know, because we had 2 games that were coming. One, the National Youth Games, then the National Sport Festival. Knowing the funding challenge of states, we had to convene an extraordinary meeting. Let us know who of you will be able to attend both, and should we hold the 2? The response was beyond our imagination, because before then we have been hearing from among the states, no, we are not coming, we are not. But out of the 29 states that attended, 27 said they will be attending the sport festival. Then 23 said they will attend the National Youth Games. So we now saw 23 out of 36 is a good number. So let us go. And we now came to the National Sport Festival. 35 states and FCT attended. So we shows the enthusiasm and excitement. So the bureaucracy, we made efforts to oil it in order to encourage participation.
All right, let's try again to see if we've taken care of that glitch from our Lagos Network Center. And again, we'll return to Hamid and say, yes, we started initially, we've asked all the others their impressions of the last National Sports Festival coming 6 years after. So let's start on that note with you, Hamid. Hopefully we can hear you at this time. Hamid, are you on with us? Let's get your impressions.
Cyril, I was just saying the other time that as far as Nigeria is concerned, sports is the opium of the people. People love sports so much that, let me share a joke with you, that whenever Nigeria is playing, for example, international, even the armed robbers will get off the streets because they want to see Nigeria, play the game and win the game. So having said that, the National Sports Festival, one has to even go to the very basics. What is the objective of setting up bringing up the National Sports Festival. One is to foster national unity. Two, to make sure that for talent that have been achieved over the years. You recall that the festival itself started in 1973. The first one was 1975. Then we had the junior, intermediate, and senior. And through that, we were able to get a lot of talents that were nurtured into national or international stars. People like Bruce Ijirigo, Felix Imadi, Peter Okodogbe, Opozigo, and all others. The Osman brothers, Ezinwa and Davidson, Innocent Egbunike, who in 1987 at the Kasarani Stadium, when we had the All Africa Games, the late Daniel Arap Moi, the president of Kenya, named the Egbunike of Africa. Mary Onyali, a host of others. And we go to other sports, table tennis, Olawumade Kodunmi, Atanda Musa, Oshona Eke, Titus Omotara, and a lot of others that were produced by the National Sports Festival and nurtured to international stardom. So for us to have that break, I think it was not good enough. But like we all said, the ministry had really tried in salvaging what would have been a very precarious situation as far as National Sports Festival is concerned. We hosted it, it was hosted this year in Abuja. It was very good. And like my colleague said, a lot of stars have been penciled down, and these stars will be nurtured to, international stardom. And, when the sports festival itself, apart from, the glamour, the excitement, it helps in bringing, in fostering national unity, cohesion, brotherliness, and people understanding, themselves outside their different cultures. So it's such a very wonderful competition. And for it to have stalled for some few years, it was not good enough. So luckily, we have this year, and kudos to the ministry.
At least good enough. Your bike is working well now, even though we'll still fine-tune it. Still some portions seasoned there, but we'll work on that. But good, as you said, the government took it up, the federal government took it up. Another aspect of this last festival was, I think last time was in 1993. Since 1993, for the first time now, we had the private sector. We had the private sector coming in. Greenfield, yes, throwing its heart in the ring, as they say proverbially, and getting to be part of it, and this culminated into the sign of the MOU. Take us through that, the Memorandum of Understanding, the commitment, 5 years, is it? 5 years? Is it a 5-year commitment?
Yeah, five editions.
Five editions, sorry.
Well, basically, after the decision of the National Council of Sports in February in Kaduna this year, we started looking at what was the problem with Calabar. Because we must try to cure the mischief that led to the failure of Calabar to host. And we discovered that funding was also one of the factors. There was also the factor of an existing administration hosting and getting a hosting right for the new administration not to have so much interest in the hosting right. And so we now said, look, let us institutionalize the National Sports Festival and get the private sector to be involved so that we can insulate it from these funding challenges. And that took us to now beginning to look for expression of interest, and Greenfield now expressed interest in the partnership. We invited them for a presentation, which they did. And after the presentation, it was reviewed technically. And after the review, a memorandum of understanding was drafted. It was sent to the Ministry of Justice, vetted, and then sent back, and we approve it, we sign it. Now, the partnership created a multi-purpose vehicle, the incorporation of a legal entity that will be the sole custodian of the resources that will be generated for the funding of the National Sports Festival. So government, if the federal government is contributing, it is going to contribute to that particular institution.
Right.
The private sector has responsibilities of marketing the National Sports Festival, advocacy, sourcing for even more source of funding, even expanding the frontiers of engaging more investors into the National Sports Festival. This we did because we believe that if this has been done earlier on, where it has been institutionalized, or even by a legislative fiat, when the National Sports Festival had been established over some time, the issue of legislating a source of funding, which we will get there one day, because we are also looking at a situation where the National Lottery Trust Fund should now have the law amended so that it can provide stable funding for the National Sports Festival, just like the last speaker had explained. The benefits of the National Sports Festival as contained in the objectives of the festival is not something that we can afford to toy with in this country. I had argued that even if we have no money to run this country, we can run Nigeria by investing in the National Sports Festival. Because if you were at the National Sports Festival, you will be amazed by what you will see there. I went there and I became very moody and reflective because I was thinking of what we have lost in 6 years. The volume of commerce there alone, the way Nigerians made fortune, the building of relationship between the young people and bridges and bonding. These are something that money cannot be used to quantify.
All right, so it's good this MOU has been put together, but again, from experience, the signing of understanding agreements, we know from experience that all looks so nice and fine on paper, but it takes only a little time before things begin to see the cracks. So let's come to
thank you very much. Yes. There was high optimism on the part of the private sector partner that it will be able to see itself through. But the reality was far different because, you know, the MOU was signed in July, and this after way into the year when most of the private sectors have had their budget concluded, even looking towards the end of the year. So approaching the other private sector for sponsorship, they say, oh, if only you had come in December, if only you had come in November, we would have included it in our budget. So when we saw that, we knew that we had a big challenge on us too. So sincerely, the private sector operator was not able to mobilize anything significant in terms of resources. But we still have faith in it, because the management of the company demonstrates so much commitment to that process, and we believe with 4 editions ahead, let us see what they'll be able to do. 2 years to prepare for the next edition.
Already our phone lines are open. I think we have a caller on the line from Calabar, Abubakar, calling in from Calabar. Hello, Abubakar. Abubakar, we're waiting to hear from you.
Hello, Oga Cyril. Good evening.
Good evening. Go right ahead.
I want to sincerely greet Honorable Minister Solomon Dalung.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Cyril. Good evening. Oga Cyril, good evening.
Good evening. Go on. Just go on.
And I want to commend the sports. I want to comment for the DCA festival. very wonderful one in the country. It's very wonderful one in the country.
All right, Abubakar, let me just say this for all those others who would be calling in tonight. As we said earlier on at the start of this program, once you see your name on screen, it means your call is through to the studio. So just go ahead and start making your point. Once you see your name has appeared on screen, that tells you that your call has been taken, it has been passed through, and all others are waiting for you to just make your point, state your position, ask a question, make a comment. So just go straight to it. That's the best way to do this. So we hope that others who will be calling in will remember that. As soon as your call is passed through, you see your name on screen, it means you can just go right ahead. And need I just mention that there are so many people who would like to get on. So once you are on, it means you should just go quickly to the point and be as brief as possible. Television time, they say, is expensive. Right. So this agreement has been signed, but let's go to our Lagos Network Center and then put this. Why is it that the private sector is a little bit reluctant, if you like, to get involved in deals, sponsorship, especially when it comes to sports? And yet, we all agree that this is one area that Nigeria should explore to the fullest.
Yeah, government alone cannot, sponsor sports. There is the need for private, public-private partnership in the development of sports. And the private sector needs to play a very prominent role along this line. Maybe the government can just throw some incentives to the private sector through tax rebate and some other things that can really, galvanize their effort into supporting, sports. So it's just basic that the government alone cannot fund sports. Sports is a very expensive, project, to fund. So private partnership, public partnership, and, the private sector must have to play a very prominent role in sports sponsorship. This happens all over the world. I mean, it's a thing that happens, everywhere. And major conglomerates, companies, practicing it, in Nigeria here, could easily, help the government, in sports sponsorship. I think it will go a very long way in really making our sports, to grow, because we need it. And like I said, sports is something that Nigerians love, and they really will want to spend any time, to watch Nigerians perform very well in competitions, either locally or internationally.
The phones quickly. We have from Enugu, Ifeanyi, calling in from Enugu. Hello, Ifeanyi. Hello? Is Ifeanyi there?
Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening. Yes, Ifeanyi, go ahead. Hello. All right, we'll just go right ahead with that. Well, we'll return to Lagos and put the same question to Eniofok and say, yes, we have seen private companies pump a lot of money into all kinds of television shows, all kinds of programs. Some of them, people have raised questions about whether they're leading us anywhere or they're adding value to the kind of development expected of Nigerian youths. But they are not in a hurry to pump that kind of money into sports development. What do you see is the challenge here, Eniofok?
Something that the ministry has to work on, and that is the packaging. When the packaging is not good, it's not attractive enough for companies to come in and help them and putting their money in that. The sports is generated most of the income from sports is from is from viewership, from advertising. And when you have a package, we won the National Sports Festival. And I was the first to praise the ministry for a job well done, bringing it back after 6 years. But we cannot gloss over the fact that there are lots of things that wasn't right. And one of the things is the packaging. How do we experience it? How do we experience it in the stadium, live? How do we experience it on TV? How do we experience it online? And these are the aspects in which the ministry actually fell short. That we didn't enjoy it on TV. Enough cameras were not enough to, we couldn't see it very well. We didn't enjoy most of the interaction online. And these are the things that companies look at. They look at the logarithms. How many people are interacting? Do we have thousands of people commenting online? And once you have those things coming up, we have a lot of interaction, then companies will know that there's a market for my business. I can put in money there. And by the time they put in money there, the ministry benefits from that. So I will just suggest that at the earlier stages, the ministry should have a constant budget, whether they are hosting, whatever the state is hosting, every 2 years to have a budget for the festival. And that money, like the IOC does in the Olympics, assists in different things. You don't give it to the states, but you help in accommodation, you help in security, some other things that you want to assist the states so that the burden of sponsorship won't be too heavy on the states. Then another thing that the ministry also fell short of was the use of former icons, former heroes, sportsmen. I mean, while it's all good that the ministry had a bureaucracy to take care of, the budgeting and everything, what Nigerians want to see is the people they can identify with. Who are they? And when you have in your main organizing committee, you have a set of former champions. You have the Innocent Ebunikes. You have, well, I call myself the Nephew Kudobongs. You have the Mary Onyalis. You have the Ansada Musas. These are people that Nigerians watch over the years. We have this as capital that the ministry is not using. We have sportsmen, they come, they compete, they go, they retire. The ministry forgets them and continues to work with newer people. And I think that's an area that the ministry should actually try and embrace. Bring sports people together. It's a family. You don't throw them away. So once we bring them together, we gather people, and people keep on getting excited. There are lots of bank MDs or a lot of private company MDs that were kids when some of these superstars were running and competing. And once you bring them to them as the face of the festival, or these are people that started from here, they will be able to channel funds to support that. So that's one thing I think they should go into. So the packaging and the use of former champions. And I think that helps to bring the whole thing together and might encourage the public and the private sector to dip their hands in their pocket and be more supportive of ventures like the sports festival.
And in addition to that, Cyril, one other area where the ministry will have to work.
Yes, Hamid, go ahead.
Go ahead. The area of spectatorship, in the stadium. If you see, I was at the opening ceremony. I was some of the events. The stadium was virtually empty. It was just the athletes watching themselves, running and jumping, diving and doing whatever. But if there had been enough publicity, for the event, definitely very many people will come into the stadium, and this will attract, the sponsors, because they are looking for where to market their products. And spectatorship is one of those areas where, people they get value for their money. So the ministry must have to work very seriously in the area of publicity that will attract people into the stadium to watch these athletes run. Even the area of spectatorship will also even encourage the athletes to even perform beyond, their normal best. That's the way I see it.
We're getting to hear a number of suggestions coming through, Minister. Packaging, the use of former, stars, and of course, the publicity. From what we're getting, more people. We would have done with more people, going to the stadium and witnessing these events. But people will tell you so many reasons, 1,001 reasons why when you have events like this, spectators don't turn up. So what is the challenge here? We're talking sports, which should interest, which should interest fairly large numbers.
I've started by mentioning the role funding plays. I mean, You know, even magicians, they need some ornaments to throw on the ground before they will perform magic. The truth about it is that our attitude as even leaders to sport, we still see sport as recreation. We have not come to terms with some of these very positive values of sports they enumerated. And unless and until you appreciate something, you will never at all see it as something.
So where are we getting this thing about we love sports, we are united? It's just lip service.
Nigerians, the common Nigerians, like one of the speakers stated, I told the IG, I said, go and look at the crime rate from the 6th to the 10th. You will discover that it went down. Those who love sports are fellow Nigerians, but Nigerian leaders, no. Nigerian leaders, those who are involved in policy making and implementation, no. They watch sports sometimes casually from their televisions. They have not come to terms with it. Unless you were in the stadium, you will not appreciate what sports is. So our leaders must know. I mean, let me give you an example of what happened during the festival. One of the states sent contingent over 1,000 kilometers to Abuja without a dime. And when the contingent arrived at Abuja, the argument was that, okay, our governor said we will send money here. It was the policy of feeding that we initiated, where we provided foods to our athletes and officials that helped that state. And then a senator from the state, when he went there and saw the situation, he now went to Wuse Market to buy kits for the contingent. And the contingent got some gold medals. That was the situation they went through. There was a time, there was a competition here in Abuja, the National Hockey League. A female team traveled to Abuja. The state could not afford hotel accommodation for the team. They were sleeping under a staircase in the stadium. And then the same team won a bronze medal in the competition. So those who love sports are fellow Nigerians.
All right.
But Nigerian leaders,
they don't
have not come to terms with the love that the common people have for sports. And unless and until we leaders love sports just like our people do, it will continue to be lip service and hypocrisy.
All right, we'll return to that in a moment. We have another caller from Benue. Godwin is on the line. Godwin, thanks for staying on. Hello. Go right ahead. Go right ahead, Godwin. Hello. Hello, Godwin.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Patrick from Benefit.
Yes, go right ahead.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sure, we are.
Yeah. I want to find what happened that in the festival that there was power outage. So what happened in the yes. I want to find out what happened. There was power outage down that day. So what's the cause of that power outage? That's my question. Thank you.
All right. Okay, that's it. Question. Perhaps the PAMSEC.
Thank you. I want to tell Godwin that there was never a time there was a power outage in the stadium. What he observed during the opening ceremony was light effect.
All right.
To show what was really happening. So it was a deliberate action to focus only on the podium, so that attention should be directed to that place. It was not a power outage. In fact, I must commend the AEDC, because we visited them and we requested that they should support